We are here with Professor Liam Teague, Anthony N. Sabger Caribbean Awards for Excellence Laureate in Arts and Letters. Liam, welcome home.
Thank you very much. Good to be home.
Tell me, what are your future plans?
Well, I've always been focused on really highlighting the versatility and profundity and beauty, of course, of the steel pan on an international level. And I just want to continue to do that in different spheres, be it commissioning new pieces for the instrument or performing with diverse ensembles. I've been very blessed to be able to perform not only with steel bands internationally, but with symphony orchestras, jazz combos, jazz bands, you know, so you name it is what I'm trying to do. And I just try to pride myself on being sort of a musical chameleon.
But Liam, when you spoke specifically about the steel pan, and that's the instrument.
Yes.
So in a sense, what you're talking about is broadening the voice of the instrument, yes. What people think of this instrument as being able to do.
Correct.
So this is Liam, the virtuoso player, talking here.
Yes.
What about Liam, the composer?
Well, unfortunately, you know, life for me now is quite a balancing act, especially becoming, you know, a husband and a father.
Congratulations.
So, thank you very much. So I don't have as much time to compose, but I'm still trying to compose for the instrument as a solo instrument. And when I don't have time to do that, I'm commissioning different composers to write for the steel pan instrument. I've commissioned people like Michael Colgrass, a Pulitzer Prize winner, Libby Larson, a Grammy Award winner, to write for the steel pan and combine the instrument with different other conventional instruments or more established instruments. So by doing that, I'm providing new work for up-and-coming steel pan musicians to perform, and also taking the instrument into certain avenues that are largely untapped. What
genre of music are we listening to here?
Essentially classical music or classically influenced music. But a lot of people don't know this about me unless you go onto the YouTube, but I pride myself in also being a seasoned improviser, so I try to play in as many styles as possible, be it ragtime, be it jazz standards, you know. So I'm all about reaching and breaking down musical barriers as much as I can.
Now, in a sense, in recent years, recent decades, popular music has moved away from instrumental music, and you're swimming against the current. How do you feel about that?
For me, whatever touches people and makes them emotionally happy, as long as it doesn't hurt them, I welcome it. So whether it's popular music, classical music, calypso, soca, I'm happy to play it and promote it.
Classical music is seen as more difficult music. And has a narrow, and jazz in a sense,
yes.
a narrower public.
Yes.
So what are you doing to broaden the public?
Well, I think it comes down to education, because a lot of times in the classical world and sometimes the jazz world, we tend to be a bit elitist in our approach. We don't want to take the time to explain the music to the layman, you know, or certain traditions that have held firm for generations, for example, not clapping in between movements, I think is sort of elitist. And we need to break down those barriers, explain music to people on their terms, maybe compare and contrast. If somebody loves popular music, say, well, listen, this is what Beethoven did that's similar to what Tupac Shakur did, you know? And it's all about breaking down barriers.
But you yourself, I mean, you've straddled so many different genres. You arrange for panorama bands.
Yes.
How do you think the different genres interact within the creative Liam?
They definitely interact. For example, if I'm arranging for, right now I'm the arranger for Silver Star Steel Orchestra. So in terms of my musical vocabulary, not only do I rely on my vocabulary that I've learned here in Trinidad, but I'm also drawing from people like Charlie Parker, his bebop language, you know, or certain things form-wise that I may have learned from the classical masters. So I try to marry, you know, as much as possible.
You said you're an improviser. Is that sort of a la Amadeus Mozart? Because he was a great improviser as well.
Yes, yes. Well, I try to improvise in a variety of styles. So whether it's jazz standards or Indian-influenced musics, you know, they all require a different sort of approach to them, you know. And when I went to Northern Illinois University at first, honestly, I hated jazz, and because I was mainly a classically trained musician, and I didn't understand what jazz was about. I just thought, okay, the musicians are making it up as they go along. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And boy, was I wrong. You know, after taking my first improvisation course from my then professor, Robert Chappell, it opened up a whole new world to me, and I've been able to integrate that vocabulary into my vocabulary as well.
And what about your Trinidad vocabulary? Did you bring anything to bear from what you would have learned in Trinidad?
Oh, most definitely. I think early on I took a lot of lessons from Trinidad for granted. For example, the ability to listen and play. It's formally called in music schools oral skills. And I remember taking my first oral skills class at NIU, and I was doing pretty well, and I couldn't understand why. And then I focused on yesteryear when I was in the Panyard, or what I like to say, the University of the Panyards, where basically everything we learned was by rote, by either listening or by imitating the hand patterns. So those types of lessons have held strong in my personal vocabulary, and then more specifically paying homage and really studying the work of the great geniuses, the Len Boogsley Sharps, Ray Holmans, Jet Samarus, you know, and eventually trying to carve out my own voice.
You used to play violin in those days. Is there any overlap? Because they seem almost like the polar opposites of musical instruments.
There is some overlap, and I think also both instruments demand a high degree of discipline and practice. And what I've tried to do is to adapt a lot of violin repertoire onto the steel pan for several reasons. For example, if I'm playing the Paganini Moto Perpetuo, that piece is very challenging, whether it's on the violin or the pan. So it challenges me in many ways. And also it helps me again in the business of breaking down barriers. If I play for classical musicians and they understand the level of dexterity that's required to play these pieces, I think I gain a sort of a newfound respect by playing those types of pieces for them.
But the violin is great for sustained notes. How do you manage to do that on a percussive instrument?
Well, the pan can be considered percussive and very melodic as well. You know, so sustaining tones with enough practice isn't too difficult on the steel pan. So I really think the steel pan is one of the most versatile instruments in the world, and we're so blessed as a country to have it as our national instrument, to have it basically born in Trinidad and Tobago, and we sometimes tend to take that for granted.
We definitely do. So which way do you see is the way forward for pan in the sense of the steel band movement?
Yes, I think it starts with education. I'm a firm believer that many people in Trinidad and Tobago pay the instrument lip service for a variety of reasons. Some of them are indifferent to the steel pan. Some of them they just plain don't like the instrument for various reasons. And it's too beautiful of an instrument for that type of mindset to exist. So again, breaking down barriers, educating people. Many people are only exposed to the steel pan during panorama time, and many times they don't really understand the intricacies of the music. You know, okay, the cellos have the theme going on here, the leads are playing a variation. So those are the types of things I want to do to educate people and to bring them closer to the steel pan and the steel panists, you know, and it's all stakeholders in the steel band world. So it's not only internationally that we have an uphill battle, but right here at home.
Oh, definitely. I mean, in a sense, when you say education, you're talking about music appreciation.
Yes, music appreciation.
And unfortunately, the current is in the direction of a sort of musical dumbing down, insofar as people are fed, you know, simpler and simpler and simpler music every day, so that their levels of appreciation are you know, it's like the tide is forever
right
falling.
Yeah, well, you know.
How do you cope with that?
Well, this is the world we live in, and what I try to do is my best, the best that I can do. So again, whether it's making comparisons to pop music and jazz or classical and calypso, I really don't care, as long as people buy into what I'm trying to do, and then eventually they're more inclined to learn more about, you know, whatever style of music exists, you know. So I'll meet them on their own terms if I need to.
So what obstacles have you encountered along the way?
Many obstacles. For example, when I perform as a soloist with symphony orchestras, by and large the musicians look at me in a skeptical way because they're thinking of the instrument as a novelty. So thinking, what is this guy doing with this Jamaican garbage can, as one person actually referred to it. And usually the piece that I play most often with orchestras is the Concerto for Steel Pan and Orchestra by Jan Bach, a former professor of mine at Northern Illinois University. And this piece, I think, is a wonderful vehicle with which to demonstrate the instrument's versatility and beauty. So by the end of the performance, not just because of my playing, but the strength of the piece, they gain a newfound respect for the pan. And this is one of the biggest reasons why I try to commission other composers to write for the instrument, so I can take the instrument and future generations have work to play, and they can take the instrument to untapped audiences.
And this is all in the field of classical, the genre of classical music?
For the most part.
I'd say instrumental art music?
Yes, yes. I've, over the past maybe 10, 15 years, I've founded a group called Panoramic, which, for want of a better term, we play world music, which is influenced by calypso, samba, choro, Brazilian choro, Indian musics, and again, the name says it all, panoramic. So we take a global view of music.
And what, is a steel band, or is pan and other
pan and other instruments? So it's pan, keyboard, saxophone, tabla, drum set, you name it, we try to sneak it in there.
And this is part of your public repertoire?
Oh yes, definitely, definitely. If you go onto YouTube, you can see links to some of our various performances.
Do you ever play with vocalists?
I've done it in the past as a soloist, and most recently, a couple years ago, we arranged a couple Puccini arias for the Northern Illinois University Steel Band, and we brought in a tenor from Chicago, and that absolutely brought the house down. Nobody expected that, and I was pleasantly surprised by the results.
One of the early great moments in pan was when Casablanca appeared at the Royal Victoria Institute, now the National Museum, with a lyric tenor, Leslie Soverall, and performed, I think it was, I can't remember what, but that was that opened the door for the steel band movement. Now, I've often wondered whether there are other doors that could be opened, like, for example, African music, which is very percussive and not so much harmonic complexity, but more rhythmic and interlocking ostinatos.
Correct.
You ever explored anything like in those directions?
Somewhat. We have a very close relationship with the percussion department at Northern Illinois University. So we do certain collaborations from time to time. Also, and you may remember this in the year 2000 at the World Steel Band Music Festival, Northern Illinois University Steel Band performed, and we placed second. And one of the pieces that we performed was called Wood and Steel, composed by Professor Robert Chappell, and it featured the Ugandan xylophone called the Amadinda with our steel band. So again, that was a wonderful marriage, so the sky is the limit. I
remember that, and indeed, in South Africa, there's a marimba and steel band festival.
Yes.
Which combines, again, two different traditional instruments.
Yes.
Another thing that I've wondered about, another door that the steel band movement closed, and perhaps we could think about reopening. Over the years, the voice of the instrument has become clearer and sharper.
Yes.
And what is now a tenor pan is a very loud, ringing instrument. But you must remember, you must have heard the old ping pong days when it was softer. We didn't have all those sharp ringing harmonics. It's a different sound. What do you think about the idea of using old pans as, you might say, another color on your palette?
Oh, I think we should definitely explore it with more consistency, because those older sounding pans have a certain charm to them. I love listening to Andy Norell play them. Sometimes we do it at NIU as well, especially when we're trying to give a historical perspective to the instrument. So it's definitely has its charm, and it could be used to more effect.
Yeah, so you think that's a possible way. So what do you see as the way forward for pan? I mean, look at, you like jazz, I like jazz, but jazz seems to have become painted into a corner as a niche. Even the great jazz musicians could walk down the street and people wouldn't recognize Wynton Marsalis.
Right.
Do you see pan as having a similar future?
I think, again, going back to my earlier statement, where we need to become musical chameleons, you know, and not necessarily say, well, I'm just going to be a jazz steel pan player or a classical steel pan player. I mean, if that's your goal, well, fine, you know, but I've prided myself in being able to get to different musical avenues. And also as an educator, an arranger, and a composer, the world is really opened up to me, you know. So I think being as versatile as possible and being as open as possible to people. Many people get sort of a defensive attitude when, you know, someone foreigner may walk up to them and ask them to play the classics, as I like to call them, the Yellowbirds and the Mariannes. And what I try to do is to embrace that and say, well, listen, I can play that for you, and I will, but this is what's also possible. Because a lot of times people are not trying to be ignorant, it's just their life's experiences. That's what they've been.
That's what they know.
That's what they know.
And actually, Yellowbird has a nice melody.
It's beautiful. I love all of those tunes.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
so
It's
we
like
just
the
need to
old
stay.
Sound of Music tunes.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful. I mean, is there
Of
anything
course.
nicer than My Favorite Things?
I don't think so. It was good enough for John Coltrane
Exactly.
to play it. So, you know, so we just need to stay, keep an open mind and realize that the sky is the limit, because, you know, the steel pan is still one of the only instruments in the world today, when you play it, even in a rudimentary fashion, that people's jaws still drop, you know, and so we can still have that effect on people. So I really think, you know, we can really take it to places.
So a question, have I been speaking to Liam the teacher and educationalist, or Liam the pan player, or Liam the musician, or are they the same person?
The same person. I think, you know, at 18 years old, I was so fixated on myself, especially when I moved to the States, about becoming this major superstar, and it was going to be all about me. And over time, I realized that that's nice, but I need to take a look at the bigger picture and realize that I need to be there for the present generation and future generations of players. So as much as I try to stay focused on what I'm trying to do as a performer and arranger, composer, I'm deeply just as passionate about helping others, you know, and making sure that this instrument can survive and have global longevity.
So what do you see as the bigger picture in terms of pan?
Well, you know, specifically in Trinidad, just like we have, for example, Marshall Monday in the soca industry, I would love to see one day that we have a Bugsy Tuesday or Ray Holman Friday or something like that, you know, where people...
Or Liam Thursday.
Well, why not? Why not? You know, so be it. But I really want people to fall in love with this instrument.
Once again, because we did,
Yes.
I mean, the
especially in the early days.
creators, 40s, 50s, even 60s, was a love, a very deep love.
Definitely, you know, and I think it can happen again, but we have work to do, and a lot of it starts from education, you know. And then internationally, you know, many people that have written for the steel pan, they've really incorporated it into the realm of the symphony orchestra, but mainly as a color instrument. They really haven't explored its potential. And this is what I'm trying to do and trying to encourage composers to do. So again, the sky's the limit.
We have just been speaking with Liam Teague, Anthony N. Sabger Caribbean Awards for Excellence Laureate in the Arts, an extraordinary panman, educator, once a child prodigy and now a virtuoso. Liam, thank you for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Professor Johnson.